I sit in my corner office. The city skyline stretched behind me like a painting I can't quite touch. My silk blouse feels impossibly smooth against my skin, almost a joke compared to the chaos it took to get here. The soft hum of the air conditioner mixes with the faint clatter of heels on the marble floor outside. My phone buzzes, vibrating against the polished walnut desk, and I instinctively know whose name will flash across the screen. It's him, my father. I haven't returned his calls in weeks, not because I want to punish him, but because I need to keep this space for myself. I glance at the framed photo on my desk, me at 23, standing beside him at some company event, smiling because I had to. I had built everything since then. Every meeting, every late night, every risk, it all added up to this office, this view, this empire. Yet the moment I see his name, a pang of something I thought I buried rises, the old hurt, the sting of his words from years ago. Your brother will take over someday, he had said, smirking like it was some private joke I wasn't in on. I close my eyes, inhale the faint scent of espresso, and steady my hands. I am not the same girl I was when he said that. Not by a long shot. The screen lights up with his call. I don't answer. Not yet. I remember the day like it was yesterday, even though I was only 21. The office smelled of polished wood and too strong coffee, and my hands shook as I clutched the stack of reports I had spent weeks preparing. I had poured everything I had into those numbers, every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of myself. My father leaned back in his chair, smirking like he already knew the verdict. This is fine, he said, tossing the papers aside. But don't forget, your brother will run this company one day. That's the plan. I felt my stomach drop. My throat tightened, so much it hurt to swallow. I opened my mouth, tried to argue, tried to make him see that I was the one keeping the company alive, the one fighting through every crisis, but the words wouldn't come. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand acknowledgement, but I only managed a stiff nod. That night, I went home and stared at the old leather-bound journal my grandmother had given me when I was 16. She had always believed in me, even when no one else did. Don't let anyone define your worth, she had written in her careful, looping handwriting. You will write your own story. Her words burned like a lighthouse in the storm of my despair. I packed a small bag, skipped dinner with my family, and walked through the city streets with nothing but my journal and a fragile sense of determination. I wasn't running away. I was stepping toward something bigger, toward proving that my value didn't live in their approval. By the time I found a tiny shared office space downtown, I had made a decision. I would take the skills they refused to recognize, the knowledge they dismissed, and the fire they couldn't see, and I would build something they couldn't ignore. I didn't know exactly how it would happen. I didn't know the path would be lonely, or the nights would feel endless. But I knew one thing: I would rise. And when I did, I wouldn't just succeed. I would do it on my own terms, and I would do it silently until the moment they had no choice but to notice. The tiny office smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, but it was mine. Every crack in the ceiling, every scuff on the linoleum floor felt like a challenge I was ready to meet. I worked through nights that bled into mornings, fueled by instant coffee and the stubborn refusal to quit. At first, clients were scarce, and I often wondered if I had made a mistake leaving everything behind. But every no I heard, every dismissive glance, only sharpened my resolve. Then I met Clara. She was in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless businesses. She believed in me before I even believed in myself. You don't need anyone's approval, she said, sliding a folder across the table. You just need to start. That folder became the blueprint for my first venture, a tiny startup within the tech branch of our family's original company. The first client felt like a mountain. I presented my pitch trembling, palms damp, voice unsteady. But when the contract was signed, the thrill was intoxicating. It wasn't just about money, it was proof. Proof that I could do this, on my own. Small victories accumulated, a second client, then a third, a team that respected my vision, Nights spent coding, negotiating, designing, and learning at a pace that left my body exhausted, but my mind alive. I kept the progress quiet. Social media showed photos of me at conferences, smiling, professional, but never revealing the scale of the deals I was closing. I couldn't risk my family undermining my work before I was ready. Every $50,000 contract felt like a secret handshake between me and destiny. Every milestone, from the first $500,000 quarter to the first profitable year, was a quiet rebellion against the dismissive smirk of my father. I learned more than business. I learned resilience. I learned the art of reading people, of turning skepticism into opportunity, of trusting my instincts even when they screamed that I was alone. I learned that independence wasn't just about financial success, it was about reclaiming power over my own narrative. By the 5th year, the company had grown quietly into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Offices opened in new cities, partnerships solidified, and revenue soared. I walked through the halls of my creation, and for the first time, I felt the intoxicating mix of pride and disbelief. I had built this world from nothing, and no one, not even my father, could erase it. I often paused in my window late at night, looking out over the city lights, thinking of that small journal from my grandmother. Her words had guided me, a constant whisper, "Write your own story." And I had. Every late night, every risk, every sleepless moment had gone into writing it, and now, the story was mine alone. The day they walked in, I felt an odd mix of anticipation and calm. My father, my mother, and, of course, my brother, who had been the heir apparent in their eyes, expected to see the same girl they had dismissed all those years ago. The girl who had been told she was talented, but not the one. I met them in my office, a space that smelled faintly of mahogany, lavender, and expensive leather. The walls were adorned with abstract art I had collected from emerging local artists, each piece a reminder of the risks I had taken. My desk gleamed under the afternoon sun, papers meticulously organized, a tablet glowing with the latest quarterly numbers. My team lingered discreetly in the background, my loyal, capable, unstoppable team. They paused as they stepped in, eyes sweeping the room, taking it all in. There was no immediate recognition in their expressions, only curiosity, maybe a flicker of doubt. My father's smirk was the same one that had haunted me for years, but now I felt no fear, only clarity. "Welcome," I said, voice calm, deliberate, each word measured. "Please have a seat." They obeyed, exchanging cautious glances. My brother looked slightly uneasy, fidgeting with his cufflinks. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, her pride and disbelief warring across her face. My father leaned back, confident, ready to assert the control he had always assumed he had. I gestured toward the tablet. "This," I said, sliding it across the desk, "is the company's latest valuation. $87 million. And yes, I grew it from the ground up, every deal, every contract, every partnership. Every late night you thought I was struggling alone." A silence fell over the room. My father's eyes narrowed, my mother's hand flew to her mouth, and my brother's jaw tightened. They had underestimated me, and now they were forced to confront the truth. I didn't just run the business. I continued, letting the words roll off my tongue with precision. I expanded it. I modernized it. I made it profitable in ways you refused to acknowledge when I first tried to step up. My father cleared his throat, finally speaking, his voice low and cautious. "That's impressive." He smiled, that same smug half-smile, but it was uncertain now, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. I leaned back slightly, letting the weight of my presence sink in. "I understand you may have had plans for my brother. But this company, this vision, it is mine. I've built it, and I will not hand it over because of tradition or favoritism or outdated assumptions about who should lead." My brother opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "I want you to see me as I am, not the version of me you assumed I would be. I have grown this business, and I have grown myself. I am not here to beg for your approval anymore." I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting them feel the weight of their own misjudgments. They looked around again, taking in the office, the art, the efficiency, the quiet power I had cultivated. The truth was undeniable. Finally, my father's smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of shame and surprise. My brother's confidence cracked, and my mother's eyes glistened with a mixture of regret and awe. The girl they thought they controlled had become the woman they had ignored, and she had done it all on her own terms. I leaned back in my chair, watching them squirm in a way that was both satisfying and necessary. The power dynamics had shifted completely. For years, I had been underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked. Now the authority was mine, and I intended to use it wisely but firmly. "I will give each of you a choice," I said, my voice steady, measured, but carrying the weight of every sleepless night, every setback, every fight I had endured. "You can be part of this company, but only if you meet certain conditions. Conditions that I should have demanded long ago." My father's expression shifted, a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Conditions?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," I said, and I let my eyes sweep over the room, lingering on each of them. First, honesty. Every interaction, every report, every meeting, no more half-truths or hidden agendas. I want transparency, because that is how trust is rebuilt. My brother shifted uncomfortably. "And if I fail?" "Then you step aside," I said, calmly but unwavering. "This isn't a threat, it's an expectation. I've built this company to survive, and it will continue to grow, with or without anyone who isn't willing to rise to the standards I've set." I turned to my mother, whose eyes had softened, reflecting both pride and regret. "You must learn to respect boundaries," I said gently but firmly. "Encouragement, not control. Support, not interference. If you want to be part of my life and my work, this is non-negotiable." Finally, my father met my gaze, and for a moment, I saw the man behind the smirk, the man who had doubted me, underestimated me, and assumed my brother's inevitability. "I understand," he said, a trace of humility in his voice. I nodded.
"Good."
"Second, each of you must pursue your own growth, outside of my shadow. Your talents, your ideas, your goals, they are valid, but they must be pursued independently. This is not about punishment. This is about reclaiming your own potential." I paused, letting my words sink in. I will not repeat the mistakes of the past. I will not step aside to accommodate old biases or traditions. I care about this family, but I care about this company and my own integrity more. If you want to be here, you will respect that. They were quiet, absorbing the shift. No longer was this my father's empire to dictate, or my brother's birthright to inherit. I was not only the architect of the business, but the arbiter of the rules. The conditions were clear, the expectations set, and the lines drawn. And yet, despite the firmness in my tone, I could feel a subtle warmth, a seed of hope that perhaps this confrontation could lead to real change. Compassion and power were not mutually exclusive. I could lead, and they could follow, but only if they were willing to rise with me, not against me. Finally, I leaned forward, resting my hands lightly on the polished desk. This is the new reality. Choose wisely. And know this, I am not the same girl you once underestimated. I am the woman who built an empire, and I will not step aside for anyone who refuses to grow alongside me. Weeks passed, and the air that had been thick with tension slowly began to clear. My father, my mother, and even my brother started showing subtle changes. My father, once quick to dismiss me, now sought my advice on strategic decisions, not because he had to, but because he genuinely respected the expertise I had fought so hard to build. My brother enrolled in a leadership program, quietly working to prove he could stand on his own without inheriting a role. My mother began asking questions not to control, but to understand, to reconnect. I watched it all with a mixture of relief and quiet pride. It wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation, ours and mine. I had forced them to confront old patterns, yes, but more importantly, I had given them a chance to grow alongside me, not beneath me. Late one evening, I found myself alone in my office, the city lights twinkling like a reminder of everything I had built. I picked up my grandmother's leather-bound journal, now worn at the edges. Her handwriting still as perfect as the day she had gifted it to me. I traced the words, "You will write your own story." I smiled, feeling the weight of the journey lift from my shoulders. That advice had carried me through the sleepless nights, the doubts, the endless work, and the moments of crushing loneliness. It had reminded me that I didn't need anyone's approval to define my worth. Looking out the window, I thought about the girl I had once been, scared, overlooked, dismissed. And I thought about the woman I had become, resilient, decisive, and unstoppable. Every scar, every tear, every risk had led me here. I closed the journal, placing it on my desk as a silent testament to the journey. This was more than business success. It was a victory of self-respect, of empowerment, of reclaiming my narrative. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to myself, a statement both simple and infinite. I am enough. I am capable. And I will never let anyone else decide my story again. The city lights outside flickered, reflecting the glow of possibility. I had not only built an empire, I had built myself. And that, I realized, was the most powerful legacy of all. Bottom of form,